Now then, as we mentioned, the former Manston airport site has been back in the headlines this week with the news that a public inquiry will be held into its future. It'll consider whether some buildings on the land can be used for non-aviation purposes. Meanwhile, the investment firm Riveroak still believes the site can have a future as an airport and are exhibiting their proposals across East Kent. Their spokesman Tony Freudmann has been talking to BBC Radio Kent's Joe Byrne.
It's not unlike East Midlands Airport in the sense that East Midlands Airport specialises in cargo but has some passengers. If we ever got to the size of East Midlands, we'd be delighted. That's some way beyond what we are forecasting.
So what kind of investment, financial investment, is this going to cost?
Over time, we're currently estimating around £200 to £300 million. That's the cost of the physical infrastructure on the ground, plus building the buildings necessary to do what you have to do. Now, that sounds like a huge sum of money, but in comparison with the £18 billion that's needed for the third runway at Heathrow, it's a relatively small amount of money. And considering the amount of potential it buys you, and the ability for this airport to relieve some of the pressure on the other London airports, we think it makes sound business sense.
And you're talking about moving around, over 500,000 tonnes of freight and cargo by 2035, I think. What kind of implication does that have on our local roads and on air traffic as well?
Well, the first thing to remember is that we are going to be producing a detailed environmental study, which will tell everyone what the impact will be on the roads. In other words, the number of truck movements, the impact on air quality, on noise, and so on.
But you must know how many planes are going to come in and out.
Well, we don't know exactly, and there's a good reason for that. It depends on what type of aircraft they are. So 500,000 tonnes, if all your aircraft are wide-bodied 747s, will be fewer movements than if some of them are 777s or 737s or smaller aircraft. All we know is that the demand is there, but we have to establish what type of aircraft will be carrying that freight.
But you don't own the land at the moment. What are you doing about that?
Well, our application for a development consent order under the 2008 Planning Act, which goes to the Planning Inspectorate, includes an application for the planning consents needed for all the investment we want, and includes a request for a compulsory purchase order in our favour, which is something that is allowed for by the 2008 Act.
Could you see passenger flights going from Manston again in the future?
Yes.
Is that part of your investment plan?
Yes, it is. To be clear, what qualifies Manston as a project of national significance under the Planning Act is the cargo potential. But just as with East Midlands, we believe that there is enough demand for passenger flights, and we envisage maybe one, maybe two low-cost airlines basing 2 or 3 aircraft here down to destinations in the sun, and maybe with 1 or 2 flights up to the north of England or Scotland.
Now, there were around 80 people at the first of a series of 6 informal exhibitions of Riveroak's plans. These residents told BBC Radio Kent if an airport would work once more on the site.
I'm with it for many reasons. These people are going to start with freight first. That's like one acorn. From that, trees will grow.
I'd like to see the flying clubs back. I'd like to see the gliders there, commercial traffic. Yeah, it's good for Thanet.
When you get the places like Heathrow and Gatwick, where they want to build another huge, great runway, it's huge opposition. People don't want it because they've already got one runway. Here, but we actually want it.
I have a vision that in 100 years' time, if it's destroyed as an airport, everybody will be in tears. It'll be a devastating blow to Kent, to England, to Thanet in particular.
BBC Radio Kent's Joe Byrne talking to Thanet residents about investment company Riveroak's plans for Manston Airport. The next exhibition, by the way, is at the King's Hall in Herne Bay from 2 o'clock on Monday afternoon.
This is BBC Radio Kent.
BBC Radio Kent. It's all here.